Imagine for a moment that you are standing in the center of a high-stakes art auction.
Oh, okay, I can picture that.
The room is buzzing and the air is just thick with tension. And right there on the wall in front of you are two paintings hanging side by side.
And visually, they are almost identical, right?
Exact same vibrant colors, same brush strokes, same lighting. In fact, if you squint, the one on the left actually looks a bit brighter. It catches your eye more. It feels more intense.
But here is the catch. One of those paintings is a breathless, original masterpiece worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
It's the real deal.
Exactly. The other is a clever forgery. It is worth the canvas it is painted on and not a single penny more.
And if you buy the fake stuff, you lose everything. You are bankrupt. Now, here is the terrifying question for you to consider. Could you actually tell the difference?
I mean, most of us couldn't. Not at a glance, anyway. We would probably be fooled by the brightness of the colors or maybe the fancy frame.
Yeah, we tend to judge by the surface impact.
We do.
And that is the terrifying premise we have been wrestling with for this entire series on Jonathan Edwards and his absolute heavyweight of a book, Religious Affections. We are deep into this now. This is the third and final leg of the journey.
The finale. And honestly, this is where the rubber meets the road.
It really is. We are finishing up what might be the most searching, uncomfortable, and ultimately hopeful investigation into the human heart ever written.
Without a doubt.
Just to orient anyone jumping in now, though, I highly recommend going back and listening to the first two parts. We have spent the last two deep dives really setting the stage for this exact moment.
Right. So part one was the thesis. True religion isn't just intellect or ritual. It is driven by affections. It is about the powerful movements of the will, like love, joy, desire. Edwards made the case that if you don't feel anything, you don't have anything.
But then part two dropped the hammer.
It did.
We spent an hour discussing what religion isn't.
Yeah.
We looked at the false signs.
Which was a bit of a demolition job, honestly. Edwards basically took away all the things we usually rely on to prove we are spiritual. High emotions.
Proves nothing.
Tears.
Yeah.
Proves nothing. Fluency in prayer or knowing the Bible inside out.
Even having verses pop into your head at the exact right moment, Edwards says none of that proves you are alive.
Which left us on a massive cliffhanger. It honestly felt a bit destabilizing.
It did. Because if the noise and the heat and the tears aren't proof of true spiritual life, then what is?
He stripped away all our usual metrics.
So today, we are finally getting the answer key.
We are. In this final section of his work, Edwards stops tearing down and he starts building up. He lays his cards on the table.
He offers 12 distinguishing signs, 12 specific characteristics that mark true, gracious, holy affections.
This is how you tell the masterpiece from the forgery.
Now, before we jump into sign number one, and we really have a lot of ground to cover today, I think we need to pause on a specific warning Edwards gives right at the start of this section.
Yeah, this is crucial.
Because I know human nature. As soon as we say, here is the checklist for a true Christian, people are going to grab that list and start looking around the room.
Oh, absolutely. Looking at their spouse or their boss or that guy in their small group. Does my neighbor have sign number 4? Because he certainly lacks sign number 8.
Right. It is almost a reflex.
Yeah.
But Edwards is adamant that is not the purpose of this list.
Not at all.
Why not, though? If there are valid signs, why can't I use them to vet the people around me?
Because you can't see the root. You can only see the fruit, and even that can be counterfeited for a season. Edwards says that attempting to judge the state of another person's heart with absolute certainty is actually a form of arrogance.
It is God's prerogative.
Exactly. It is God's prerogative, not ours. We simply don't have the data access required to see the soul.
So if I can't use it to judge my neighbor, what is this tool actually for?
It is a mirror. It is strictly for self-examination. It is for you to take into your own closet, shut the door, and ask, is this true of me?
And even then, Edwards offers a really important nuance.
He does. He mentions that baby Christians, meaning those who are brand new to the faith, or Christians who are in a dead frame, meaning they're spiritually cold or struggling right now, they might have a really hard time seeing these signs.
He uses an analogy about a dark room, doesn't he?
He does, and it is very helpful for anyone listening who might feel discouraged today. He says if you are in a dark room, it doesn't matter how well you can describe the furniture. You can't distinguish a table from a chair because there is no light.
Wow.
Right? So if you are currently walking in sin or spiritual darkness, looking for these signs won't help you much because your eyes are dim. You need to turn the lights back on. You need to repent and return to God before you can clearly read the evidences of your own heart.
That is such a crucial disclaimer. We are not playing judge and jury for the world. We are looking at our own hearts, and we need to do it with some humility.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. 12 signs. Edwards groups them logically, so let's take them in batches. The first few seem to deal with the source, the origin story of these affections.
Right. Where do they actually come from in the first place?
Sign number 1. Edwards says true affections are spiritual, supernatural, and divine in their origin.
This is the foundation of everything else.
Okay.
If you get this wrong, the rest just doesn't matter. Edwards is arguing that true Christianity isn't just a human being trying really hard to be good.
Right.
It isn't just a human being having really intense natural emotions like the way you feel at a rock concert or watching a sad movie.
So it's not just natural emotion turned up to 11.
No. It is a new kind of sensation entirely. He says that when the Spirit of God enters a person, he doesn't just move things around like an external agent. He acts as a spring of life communicating his own nature.
He talks about a new sense, right?
Yes.
This isn't just seeing things more clearly, it's seeing something entirely new.
Yes, and this is one of his most famous illustrations. It is essential for understanding Edwards. Imagine a man born blind. You can explain the concept of red or blue to him. You can talk about the physics of light wavelengths and optics. He might be brilliant. He might be able to write a dissertation on color theory.
But he has never seen it.
Exactly. He has the intellectual framework, but he lacks the sense. He has no idea what red actually looks like.
Right.
Or take the analogy of honey. This is the one that really lands, I think.
I love the honey analogy.
You can describe honey to someone who has no sense of taste. You can say it is sweet, sticky, golden, viscous. You can analyze its chemical composition on a whiteboard.
Sure.
But the moment a man with a working sense of taste puts a drop of honey on his tongue, he experiences something that the other man can never know through mere description. He tastes the sweetness.
And Edwards is saying that spiritual life is exactly like that taste.
Yes, true grace gives the soul a new inward perception or sensation. It is a spiritual taste.
So it is the difference between knowing about God and actually knowing God.
It is immediate, it is real, and it is something the natural man simply does not have access to.
So practically speaking, this means it is not just that I used to hate church and now I tolerate it because I know I should. It is that I perceive a beauty and a reality that I was literally blind to before.
Precisely. It is supernatural, and Edwards is very careful here to distinguish this from imagination, which I think is a trap a lot of us fall into.
How so?
Well, some people think being spiritual means having vivid mental images. You close your eyes and you see a light, or you imagine the face of Jesus on the cross, or you picture heaven.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
Edwards says, no, that is just your brain working. That is natural imagination. Any human can do that. This new sense isn't a hallucination. It is a perception of the holiness and moral beauty of divine things. It is completely alien to the natural man.
That is a high bar.
Yeah.
It is terrifying, actually.
Yeah.
Because you can't conjure that up yourself. You can't force yourself to taste honey if you have no tongue.
This is exactly the point. It has to be given. It is a completely divine work.
Which leads right into sign number 2.
Yeah.
If you have this new sense, this new taste, what is it that you actually love? Edwards says the second sign is that we love divine things for themselves.
This is a heavy one. Edwards calls this the objective ground. He asks a very simple, very piercing question. Why do you love God?
Well, the standard Sunday school answer is because he saved me. Because he died for me.
And Edwards would say, be careful.
Really? But isn't that just gratitude?
It is, but Edwards warns that gratitude can be a slippery slope if that is all there is.
Okay.
If the only reason you love God is because of what he did for you, because he kept you out of hell, or because he gave you a nice family, or because he answers your prayers, that might just be self-love disguised as religion.
It calls that mercenary love.
Yeah.
Like a soldier who fights only for the paycheck, not for the cause.
Right. Think about it. Even a selfish person loves someone who does nice things for them. Jesus said, if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do the same.
So
if God is just a vending machine that gives you blessings, and you love the machine because you like the snacks, you don't love the machine, you love the snacks.
Man, that hits home. He uses the analogy of a judge to explain this, doesn't he?
Yes. It is a really powerful image. Imagine a criminal standing before a judge. The criminal is completely guilty, but the judge acquits him and lets him go free.
Okay.
The criminal might fall down and kiss the judge's feet. He might tell everyone, I love that judge. He's the absolute best.
But he only loves the judge because he escaped prison.
Exactly. He doesn't care about the judge's integrity, his wisdom, his jurisprudence, or his character. He just loves the benefit. He loves his own skin. And The judge saved his skin.
Versus a true friend who loves the judge because he is a good, wise, and just man, regardless of whether he gets a get-out-of-jail-free card.
Precisely. Edwards says if your religion collapses the moment you aren't getting what you want, when suffering comes or when the blessings dry up, it is a sign that your foundation was self-love, not divine love.
True affection delights in God simply because he is God. So the test is, if God sent you to hell, would he still be glorious?
That is the extreme version of the question, yes. Obviously, we love him because he saves us, but that love is secondary. It flows from seeing who he is. We love the giver more than the gift.
But what is it about God that we are supposed to love? That brings us to sign number 3. Edwards gets very specific here. He talks about the beauty of holiness or moral excellency.
This is the core attraction. To understand this, you have to understand the distinction Edwards makes between God's natural attributes and his moral attributes.
Break that down for us. What is the difference there?
Natural attributes are things like power, knowledge, greatness, eternity. God is all-powerful. He is all-knowing. He is infinite.
Okay.
But Edwards points out something profoundly disturbing. The devil possesses these traits too.
The devil is powerful.
Incredibly powerful. He is an angel, a spiritual being. He has knowledge that dwarfs the smartest human. He is an eternal spirit.
That is a disturbing thought. So you can be powerful, smart, and eternal and still be the absolute essence of evil.
Exactly. Power without holiness is just a terrifying monster.
Yeah.
What makes God lovely, what makes him worthy of worship and not just fear, is his holiness, his purity, his justice, his truth, his moral perfection.
Edwards calls this the beauty of the divine nature.
Yes, it is what makes God God.
So the test is, do I love God because he is a cosmic superhero who can do cool stuff?
Yeah.
Or do I love him because he is holy?
Right. Even demons tremble at God's power. They know he is the biggest being in the room. They respect his strength because they have to.
But they hate his holiness.
They despise his purity. A true saint, someone with that new sense we talked about in sign 1, looks at God's holiness and finds it sweet. They find it beautiful.
Like the honey.
Yes, they aren't just awed by the thunderstorm of his power. They are melted by the sunlight of his purity. They love the goodness of God, not just the greatness of God.
That's a subtle but massive distinction. I can be awed by a nuclear explosion, but I don't love it. But I can love a person's kindness. Edwards is saying we need to love God's character.
And that love for his character becomes the foundation for everything else. It explains why we hate sin, because sin is the opposite of that beauty. It explains why we want to be better people, because we want to resemble that beauty.
Okay, so we have established the origin. It is supernatural, the object, which is God himself, and the specific quality is his holiness. Now, Edwards shifts gears a bit. The next batch of signs deals with how this affects the mind and the heart. Sign number 4, enlightenment of the mind.
Here, Edwards is fighting against the idea that spiritual experience is just raw emotion. He says holy affections are not heat without light.
Heat without light. That sounds like a fire that burns you but leaves you entirely in the dark.
It is incredibly dangerous. Edwards saw a lot of this in the Great Awakening. You had people screaming, fainting, having impressions, but if you asked them, what is the gospel, who is Christ, they couldn't give you a straight answer.
They had no theological understanding whatsoever.
None. Edwards insists that true affections arise from the mind actually engaging with truth.
He makes a big deal about the difference between intellectual understanding and imaginary ideas. We touched on this with the mental images, but let's go a bit deeper. If I close my eyes and picture Jesus on the cross, the blood, the crown of thorns, and I start to cry, isn't that spiritual?
Edwards would say not necessarily. That is your imagination. A play or a movie could produce the exact same reaction. You are reacting to a mental tragedy, a sad picture, not necessarily the spiritual reality of atonement.
So I am crying for a dying man, not weeping over the sins that put the God-man there.
Exactly. Spiritual light isn't a mental picture. It is seeing the loveliness of divine truth. It is reading a doctrine like God is just or Christ is the mediator and suddenly understanding, oh, that is beautiful, that is right, it fits.
So it is the difference between hallucinating a light and actually understand what light is and what it does.
Yes. True affections usually come from the mind engaging with scripture or doctrine. It is not just a sudden impulse.
Edwards is very skeptical of people who claim the Spirit works by bypassing their brain.
Extremely. Like opening the Bible, pointing a finger blindly, and taking that verse as a personal message.
The lucky dip method of theology.
Right. And Judas, when he hanged himself, go and do likewise. It is dangerous. The Spirit works through the rational mind, enlightening it to see the glory of what is actually written in the text.
Which leads perfectly to sign number 5. If the mind is enlightened, what happens to our beliefs? Edwards says sign 5 is a reasonable and spiritual conviction.
This is all about certainty. The true saint has a deep, unshakable conviction that the gospel is real.
But isn't that just faith? Isn't faith believing what you can't prove?
It is faith, but Edwards is defining the quality of that faith. It is not just assuming it is true because your parents told you or because you live in a Christian country or even because it seems logically probable. It is a conviction that comes from having tasted the reality.
Back to the honey analogy again.
Exactly. If you taste honey, you don't need a logical argument to prove it is sweet. You know it is sweet because you have experienced it. You could have 10 philosophers arguing that honey is actually salty, and you would just laugh at them. Edwards says when a person sees the beauty of holiness, sign 3, they intuitively know this didn't come from man. This is divine.
So it is a conviction that can withstand the world.
Yes. He contrasts this with what we might call flash-in-the-pan faith.
Tell me more about that.
Many people get excited about religion for a while, maybe because of a charismatic speaker or a social movement, but they lack this deep-root conviction. When the intellectual arguments get tough or when the cultural tide turns and it is not cool to be a Christian anymore, their faith simply withers.
But the person who has seen the glory of God,
You can't argue them out of it any more than you can argue a man out of believing the sun exists when he is standing outside in the noonday light. It anchors the soul completely.
that brings us to sign number 6,
Yeah.
which might honestly be my favorite, but also the most painful one to read. Evangelical humility.
This is the acid test. If you want to know someone is real, look for this. Edwards makes a brilliant distinction here between legal humility and evangelical humility.
Let's unpack that. What is legal humility?
Legal humility is being forced low. Think of a slave cowering before a harsh master or a criminal caught by the police. You know you are small. You know you are in trouble. You are humbled by the circumstances or by fear. But deep down,
You hate it.
you hate it. If you could, you would rise up and overthrow the master.
So it is a forced submission. I am nothing, and I hate that I am nothing.
Exactly. But evangelical humility, gospel humility is completely different. It comes from seeing God's beauty. You see how infinitely holy and lovely God is, and instantly you see your own sinfulness in contrast.
And here's the key. You voluntarily take the low place.
Yes, you are happy to be small so that God can be big.
He uses the image of the alabaster box here, which is so beautiful.
Yes, the woman in the Gospels who anoints Jesus. She is brokenhearted, weeping, wiping his feet with her hair. She isn't cowering in terror. She is melting in love.
Edwards says true affections flow from a broken heart.
The ointment only flows when the box is broken.
This flips the script on what we often think of as a super Christian.
Yeah.
We tend to think the holier you get, the more confident you are. I am a saint. Look at my halo.
Edwards says it is the exact opposite. The hypocrite is often humble about their attainments, but spiritually proud. They think they are eminent saints. They love to talk about how high their experiences are.
But the true saint.
They are often overwhelmed by how little love they have compared to what God deserves.
It is a paradox. The holier you are, the more sinful you feel.
In a sense, yes. Edwards uses the analogy of a sunbeam in a dusty room.
Oh, I remember this one.
If you look at a room in dim light, it looks perfectly clean. But let a bright sunbeam shine in and suddenly you see millions of dust motes dancing in the air.
And the dust didn't just appear.
No, the light revealed it. The closer a person gets to the light of God's holiness, the more they see the dust of their own corruption.
So if you meet someone who thinks they are just about perfect, Edwards would say they are likely walking in the dark. Real holiness looks like brokenness.
That is profound and entirely scriptural.
Okay, moving into segment 3. We have looked at the origin, the object, and the mind and humility. Now Edwards looks at the change this produces in the person. Sign number 7, change of nature.
This brings us back to the idea of the new birth. Edwards argues that true affections aren't just a mood swing. You don't just feel differently for a weekend retreat. You become a completely different species of person.
He says conversion is becoming a new creature.
Right. It is a permanent shift in the soul's governing principles. Imagine a river flowing south. You can create a temporary dam or a diversion that splashes water north for a moment. That is like a temporary religious emotion.
But a change of nature.
Is the riverbed itself tilting so that the water flows north permanently?
So if someone has a massive emotional experience, crying, shouting, falling down, but a week later they are exactly as selfish, exactly as greedy, exactly as angry as they were before,
Then it wasn't a gracious affection. Edwards is brutal here. He says high emotions that vanish and leave a person exactly as they were before, carnal, selfish, are not from God.
True grace changes who you are.
It creates a permanent new disposition.
And what does that new disposition look like? That takes us to sign number 8, the lamb-like spirit.
This is the character of Jesus. Edwards points out that the Holy Spirit chose the form of a dove, and Jesus is called the Lamb. These aren't aggressive, predatory animals.
They're gentle.
Exactly. True affections produce the spirit of Jesus' meekness, forgiveness, mercy, and love.
Edwards warns specifically against the kind of boldness that is really just arrogance or pugnacity.
We see this sometimes, especially online. People who are zealous for the truth, but they are actually just jerks.
Yes.
Edwards calls that false zeal. It is noisy, it is boisterous, it loves to fight, it masquerades as courage, but it is really just pride. True Christian fortitude is quiet and humble. It is strong, but it is the strength of a rock, not the violence of a storm.
He talks about forgiveness here too, which is so convicting.
Yes. This is a non-negotiable for Edwards. If you have high religious experiences, you claim to be on the mountaintop with God. But you hold grudges, you hate your enemies, you are envious of others.
Edwards says your affections are false.
The fruit of the Spirit is love, peace, patience. You can't claim to be close to the God of love while harboring hatred in your heart.
That connects seamlessly to sign number 9, softness of heart or tenderness.
This goes back to the conscience. Edwards observes that false affections often sear the conscience. People feel safe because they think they are saved, so they become careless about sin.
They think I am God's favorite, so it doesn't matter if I fudge the truth a little or gossip. God understands.
But the true saint is like a burnt child.
A burnt child dreads the fire.
Exactly. Because they have seen the holiness of God, sign 3, and felt their own brokenness. Sex war, they are terrified of sinning. Not just terrified of getting caught, but terrified of displeasing the God they love so much. They have a holy fear.
So while the hypocrite becomes bold and presumptuous, thinking God and I are tight, the true saint walks carefully, treating their heart like a delicate treasure that they don't want to drop in the mud.
Beautifully put. It is a tenderness of spirit. They are easily moved, easily convicted, quick to apologize, quick to mourn over their failures. Their heart isn't calloused, it is sensitive.
We have 3 signs left. This last batch, segment 4, deals with balance, appetite, and the ultimate proof. Sign number 10, symmetry and proportion.
This is a fascinating observation by Edwards. He says false religion is almost always lopsided. It is monstrous.
Monstrous, like Frankenstein.
Like a body with a giant head and tiny legs. Or one huge arm and one withered arm. Edwards says false affections are unbalanced. You might see someone who has huge zeal but zero patience.
Or great hope, but no fear of God.
Or they love the brethren, their own little clique, but they completely hate their enemies.
Ah, I see. They pick and choose the parts of Christianity that fit their personality.
Exactly. If you are a naturally aggressive person, you pick the zeal parts. If you are a sentimental person, you pick the comfort parts.
But true grace
resembles the image of a human. It has all the parts in proportion. The true saint has zeal and patience. They have joy and godly sorrow. They love their friends and their enemies. There is a symmetry to their character.
He also mentions consistency here, being the same in the closet as in the public meeting.
That is the killer test. Hypocrites are often only religious when others are watching or when the music is playing and the emotions in the room are running high.
But take them home, put them in their secret prayer closet on a Tuesday morning, and there is nothing there.
The true saint loves God just as much in the dark as in the spotlight.
That leads to its sign number 11, spiritual appetite.
This is one of the most counterintuitive signs. Edwards says false affections make a person satisfied. They say, I have arrived, I had this great experience in 1995, I am saved, I am rich.
They just rest on their past experiences.
But the true saint is never satisfied. The more they love God, the more they want to love him. It is an insatiable longing.
Wait, doesn't Jesus say, he who comes to me shall never hunger?
Edwards addresses that, actually. He says, yes, the misery of hunger is gone. The starving emptiness of the soul is filled. You aren't scavenging in the dumpster anymore.
But the appetite for excellence remains and grows.
It is like tasting the most amazing food in the world. You don't say, well, that was good, never need to eat that again. You say, I want more of that.
So if you feel like you have made it in your spiritual life, you probably haven't.
Exactly. If you are complacent, be worried. The hypocrite longs for comfort or assurance. They just want to feel safe. The saint longs for holiness. They want to be like God.
And because God is infinite, that journey never ends. The hunger increases with the feeding.
It does.
And now we arrive at the summit. the final sign, sign number 12. Edwards calls this the sign of signs.
Christian practice.
Sounds so simple. Just doing it.
But it is the one thing Edwards says we cannot fake long term. He defines this not just as talking about religion, but doing it. And he breaks it down into 3 parts: universal obedience, self-denial, and perseverance.
Universal obedience meaning no picking and choosing.
Right. You don't just obey the commands that are easy or that fit your temperament. You obey the ones that cut across your grain.
Self-denial.
This is the specific test. Obeying when it hurts. Obeying when it costs you money, reputation, or comfort.
Edwards says hypocrites are fluent in tongue religion.
They can talk about feelings and experiences all day long. But practice is costly. It is easy to say, I love God with tears in your eyes during a worship song. It is very hard to forgive a neighbor who just sued you or to give away money you were saving for a vacation because someone else needs it.
Action versus talk.
Edwards says that at the judgment day, God doesn't ask about the heat of your rapture or the purity of your doctrine. He looks at the fruit. Faith without works is dead.
So this is the ultimate proof. For others, it is the only way we can judge by their fruit. And for ourselves.
It is the sign of signs. Edwards believes that looking at your own life, your pattern of obedience, your willingness to suffer for Christ, your consistency over time, is a much more reliable way to know you are saved than trying to analyze your feelings.
Because feelings fluctuate.
A life of obedience powered by love is the solid rock.
Wow. Okay, let's take a breath. We have covered 12 dense searching signs. We have moved from the supernatural origin to the holy object through the enlightened mind and humble heart to the lamb-like spirit and the tender conscience, all the way to the insatiable hunger and the life of costly obedience.
It is a comprehensive picture of a genuinely healthy human soul.
But I have to ask, hearing this list, it is intimidating. I look at that list and I see a lot of failure in my own life. I don't always have a lamb-like spirit. I am not always hungry for God. I'm definitely not perfectly balanced.
And this is exactly where we need to circle back to Edwards's pastoral heart. He knows this crushes us, but he would say the presence of these signs is often a battle, not a finished product.
What do you mean by that?
The fact that you mourn your lack of hunger is ironically a sign of hunger, sign 11. The fact that you grieve your lack of meekness is a sign of tenderness, sign 9.
Because the hypocrite doesn't grieve these things.
He ignores them or excuses them completely.
So it is about the direction, not perfection.
Exactly. This list destroys the confidence of the proud hypocrite who thinks he is perfect, but it should actually encourage the humble struggler.
If you look at this list and say, oh, I want this, but I fail so often, that brokenness is sign number 6.
That is a relief. It really is a mirror. It shows us where the dirt is, but it also shows us if there is life underneath it all.
Edwards leaves us with a haunting image at the very end of the book. He talks about a statue.
Yes, the beautiful statue.
He says a statue might be carved to look exactly like a man. It might be painted perfectly. It might have the right proportions. It might even look better than a real man, more handsome, more noble.
But it does nothing. It brings nothing to pass. It is just stone.
And a real man.
A real man might be scarred. He might be tired. He might stumble. But he moves. He acts. He breathes. He has a beating heart.
That is the question we leave you with today. Is your religion a beautiful statue, carved, painted, standing still in a corner of your life? Or is it alive?
Does it move? Does it hunger? Does it bleed when cut and heal with grace?
The deep dive into Edwards is not just about learning 18th century theology. It is about asking the only question that ultimately matters. Is there life in the soul?
Thank you for taking this journey with us. It has been heavy, but it has been very good.
We will see you on the next deep dive.